Hello, ground passers, and welcome back to another episode of Meet the Professionals, a series where we bring you the stories and insights from professionals working in and around tennis. I'm really excited about today because I feel like as new YouTubers ourselves, Nick, we're going to learn a lot today. So I might have my notebook out, but really excited about today's guest. He's someone who has worn many hats in the world of tennis: college athlete, a coach on the pro tour, content creator, and now turning pro at 30 as well. We've got today Karue Sell. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Let's do this.
Thank you for coming on the pod. And really, when we started this series, you were one of the first people that I wanted to talk to because you are very unique in the sense that you are a professional around tennis, so you're working in and around tennis, but you're actually also on the tour, so you're a player as well. So it's a really great combo. But we will start this where we start everything, and it's when you were little, the first thought in your mind of I want to be what was that?
I mean, I'm gonna say tennis player because I started so early, and I think as a kid, I probably, I was good as a really young kid, and I think once you start, winning little, even if they're little tournaments, right, in your city, but I think it just kind of makes you feel good. You don't really remember that much, but I probably showed that, I had a little bit of talent in that thing, and it sort of becomes the thing you do. I always played a lot of sports. I think, there was a moment there that maybe I wanted to be a basketball player, and then I realized that wasn't going to happen. But in general, I've always been so into sports, but tennis has always been the one that drove me. And I sometimes when you're in sports for that long, it's hard to really see anything else that you want to do, right? Think about, the more normal life, jobs, things like that. So I think for me, it was always tennis.
How early did you start?
It's probably like 5. But
wow.
Again,
okay.
It's
That's
not
early.
Yeah, it's early, but it's like, I think when people say there's he's taking lessons every day at 5. I'm like, no, I'm just hitting against the wall with my dad while he's playing. And then you're doing a lesson here and there, and you play a little tournament here and there. And I really only started playing every day when I was like 14. So it wasn't like I was always competing and playing tournaments, but there was always I was kind of like a multi-athlete person, like just playing soccer, playing basketball, playing a bunch of stuff. So, but tennis, obviously, I think I picked up the earliest.
Okay. Well, so if you started tennis so early, so you knew right away that you wanted to be a pro tennis player. Did you have, and going back at this point, you're in Brazil. You live in Brazil. Yeah. So do you have a path? Do you know what you're doing? Do your parents put you into sort of do they get you a coach right away? How does that work?
Well, I'm from a small town. So by the time I was around 11, 12, there wasn't really anybody to play with me there. So we started going to a little academy that was about an hour away, an hour and a half away. And again, just twice a week, once a week, kind of depending on schedule. I think there was always, maybe you have this dream of being a professional tennis player, but the reality is when you're that young, you're just very, you're growing up with, it's Roger, it's Rafa, it's the golden age of tennis basically, right? So you're just looking at those guys and you're just I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
But naive, you're so naive as a young player. You're you're not going to be Roger, and that's a disappointment in itself, right? Once you're a little older, you're yeah, I'm not that good. I'm not that good. I'm not as good as Roger. It's just not going to happen. But you grow up with those guys, and so they really make you want to be a pro tennis player, I think. But you also don't know anything about the business of being a pro tennis player and how it works. So you're just progressing through the natural progression of things, right? I'm in the academy. I'm playing tournaments. I'm playing state tournaments, and then you're playing like sort of more national level tournaments, and eventually playing ITFs, kind of doing the whole tour there when you're a bit older. So you're just kind of going through that progression. That's sort of natural progression. And then only like later when you're like 16, 17, and then you start like, okay, well, I go to college. Like I always thought about the college path. A lot of players in Brazil don't, but I always thought about the college path. And you just, you eventually sort of have to make that decision because tennis is not like, it's not like like an NBA draft. You know what I mean? You can just play pros or not play pros. There's no turn pro. You know what I mean? It's just like you just go play pro events. And so, I was always like a pretty solid junior. I think I finished in 16s. I finished number one in the country. I got to like top 30 in the world, but I wasn't like, winning junior slams. I wasn't this like, I was good, but when you're a teenager, you're always like, oh my God, this other guy here is so good. And so it's a little tricky, but I just went through like sort of the natural progression of like a junior tennis player, really.
Yeah. I mean, this is maybe a question someone would ask at the end of an episode, but now that we're here in this point, so you're 16, you're 15, you're 17. I really loved what you said where you're sort of like, well, then you realize you're not as good as Roger. What is your advice to people who are coming up and maybe watching you and they're like, well, I want to be Karue Sell and I'm like I'm 12, I'm 13. Yeah. How do I do that? And is there a point where you're sort of like, well, I'm really not as good as Karue, but I'm going to try. What is that process?
I think it's just like when you're young, you're so caught up in other people's timelines, right? Like, oh, this guy's already winning challenger matches and he's like 17. Like I was growing up, like where the guys, maybe Bernard Tomic was a little older, but like some guys that were like already kind of doing really well. And you're sort of just, you can get a little bit discouraged by other people's timelines. And I think the only thing I can say, if you're kind of like a junior, like a 13, 14, 15, just don't worry about that stuff yet. You know what I mean? Just like play the juniors. Don't get ahead of yourself. Like there's people who are so outside of the curve, like the Fonsecas of the world, they're so outside of the curve. Like you can it's so hard to not compare yourself to them, but especially when you're young. So just honestly, like I would have a little fun, like enjoy sort of like, you're going to tournaments. It can be a little annoying. There's pressure, there's this and that. We want to hide from all that, but like in reality, you're just going to have to go through it. And then, as you sort of become like a young adult, you're playing college, maybe you're like deciding, do I go play pros? Do I even have the talent or the money to do this? It's like, to me, it's like you want to look at it as, like, what are you going to do with your life, right? Like there's all this kind of things. You're young, you can kind of sand it, have a good time. I know it seems like a silly thing to say, but sometimes I think we get so caught up in just like, what's the perfect process to do this whole thing, that it's just like you're not figuring out your own thing, your own timeline, how you respond well to the pressure, how you deal with all the things that come as being like a professional tennis player, and that the reality is like the vast majority of us is not going to make it by the standards that we had in our head. Like we didn't make, like I didn't really make it by the standard I thought like when I was 15, 16. Right. But now, like at my age, I just sort of like, I'm trying my best. Like there's obviously times where I don't, but like I'm just trying to enjoy this sort of like final ride that I have. Right. Because I think often I didn't really enjoy the process. You're just sort of like, you're just the next thing. So but be really conscious of your own timeline and trust that like your time is your time. You can't really like compare it to the other people. Right.
Well, I guess going back to your kind of journey a little bit. So you're young, you think about college, you think, okay, I'm going to go to college. Did you think that was going to be a viable way to go pro and continue playing, like going to college and then turning pro?
Yeah, I mean, like I obviously ended up at UCLA, so, we had a very strong team. But to me, it was like right as I was kind of ending juniors, I played some pros and I was so burned out already. Like I was just kind of like, I was in the same academy for a long time. I just needed something. Yeah. But I just needed something different because I was in the same place for like 8 years training, and I was just like, I started doing like the pro tour thing. At the time it was still like 10Ks and 15Ks, and you're like, I don't want to do this. Like I'm not ready for this. I knew, like, I had a gut feeling that it was like, if I keep doing this, I'm done within like 2 years, and that's it. And so what was the point of doing all the playing before? So to me, it was like, let's go to college. You can leave at 21, 22, and nowadays, like, what's that, right? Like, you're a baby on tour. It used to be maybe, people are peaking at that age, but that doesn't exist anymore. So to me, it was a very viable option. But going into college, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking about pros anymore. Not like for the first, like, I'm gonna do my 4 years, and then after the 4 years, I'll decide it. I just want to really enjoy this sort of 4 years that I'm gonna have here. And I really don't want, I didn't play any pros in the summer. I didn't do anything. I just enjoyed being like a
Oh,
college person slash athlete. Yeah.
okay. Okay. So you
I
literally,
really
you kind
enjoyed
of,
like the team aspect of things.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, push it aside. I was like, if I'm playing really good tennis at the end of the 4 years, I'll give it a go. But if not, like, we'll try something else. Because I needed to figure out, like, what's outside of this. Like, what do, like, yes, I can still work with tennis. Because only when I moved to America, I was like, oh, working in tennis here, good career, you can make a living. Like, there's all sorts of opportunities. There's college tennis, there's this, and that, right? So you start sort of experiencing like life, just a little bit outside of that bubble of tennis that you were your entire life. And so I needed that. I needed to just sort of just be a normal person. And obviously the team was awesome, and being as a college, just a college and athlete is really fun. But there was all sorts of challenges into moving to America, and dealing with the academia and all that stuff that, like, you're just not prepared for. So I just needed to focus on that, and everything else, like, had to take a little bit of a pause.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you then, because you go to college, then you start coaching.
Hmm.
How do you make that transition? I mean, you've talked about it already, where you kind of saw that there was other jobs in tennis other than
Yeah,
playing tennis,
yeah,
which I kind of love, because I think, people will reach out to us about careers in tennis. It's not just being a player. How do you
yeah.
then decide, oh, coaching, I could do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, to be honest, I started just, I operate a lot on like kind of gut feeling, if I'm being totally honest. I don't plan too far ahead that way. So when I finished college, to me, it was like, well, it's 2016, in my head, I was playing good ball. I had a really good final season, and I was playing well, but I was like, how am I going to afford this? Like, right? How am I going to go play pros at this point? My parents in Brazil, like, it's fine, but like, I'm just like, there's no way I can do this. And I so enjoyed college tennis. I was like, oh, maybe I'll give the college tennis thing a go. So I was a coach at Pepperdine for a year, volunteer coach, just to get your foot on the door, get the experience. I start teaching some lessons just to make some money. And so for that year, I was just kind of floating, really, just trying to figure it out. Like, I mean, I think there's, like, you're 21, you're 22, like, you know nothing really. So I just wanted to get that experience. I did a year at Pepperdine, and I was training. I was playing, like, I'd play a couple futures here and there. I was hitting with the guys a lot, so I was still like really, competing and playing a lot. But um, at the end of that season, I was just kind of like, I don't think the college thing is for me. There were those aspects of it. I was like, it's not really what I want to do. And I
Right.
was like, let's give it a go on the pro tour, just because I was like, it's I won't have that shot again, kind of in my head at that time. So I just went and did it. I ended up, like, I think I won like literally my first future back. Like, I played some men's open and then played a future and won it. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to do this, right? And yeah, so I did. Then I went back on tour, and just kind of did it for a year or so, but very difficult, like, with financials, all the finances and all that stuff. So I didn't last very long.
So obviously going back to the point of, like, you've obviously figured this out, with, like, okay, struggling a bit. So um, you obviously then went, okay, coaching's a good way to get some income. I guess I got a couple of questions off the back of that. Is that pretty common for players at kind of challenger level, future level, to be coaches on the side? And I guess off the back of that, and pretty much to anyone listening, whether they're kind of want to be a player or not, if they're thinking about being a coach, what would you advise them to think about?
Question. I mean, I think I think number one, I don't know if the players are like being like coaches and players sort of as they go, that they stop. I think most people just kind of, dive into it, and however financially they can sustain themselves out there, they figure it out. I think in the US is a little bit more profitable to be a coach than anywhere else. So like if you're an American coaching here, I think you're gonna have a little bit more, makes a little bit more sense versus maybe anywhere else, right? So I think that's when you're a foreigner and you start sort of like, earning what you can earn here as a coach, you're like, whoa, this is a really good career. I think everywhere else is really not that way, right? So, and if you want to become a coach, I mean, there's so many that you got to sort of like look into like your personality and see like what's your best attribute, because like I think like a college coach, for example, it's not, you're not really just like like a technique coach, or like you have to be like a great manager of people, of like there's a lot more that goes into it, right? So there's all tennis careers that are going to fit different personalities, I think. And so like if you're looking to go into tennis, I know guys that like went to college coaching that I was like, that's it. That's for them. That's the perfect job. They're like, they love it. They want to really help these kids grow and all that stuff. It's just, they just kind of have that personality. And to me, like I thought college, like you don't really control your time as much. For me, that's a very, very valuable thing. I don't need to be rich, but I need to own my own time. And that's something that's very important to me. So, to me, that didn't work. And so but you have to experiment. If you're trying things out, like I think there's like an experimentation process that is very important, at least in my opinion, because I did try everything. I was a hitting partner. I was just saying yes to a lot of stuff early on. I was just like, yeah, sure. You want me to be a hitting partner and for Fed Cup, I'll go. I wasn't making that much money or anything. I was just kind of doing stuff and then seeing what like kind of felt fun, kind of felt like a potentially good career.
Right. So, I mean, we've talked about how you started in tennis, you went into coaching and stuff, but anyone listening to this that knows you, they know you because of YouTube. Like that's how you first came on my feed. Before I even knew you played tennis, I stumbled on the MyTennisHQ channel and I was like, oh, interesting. Because it was more sort of instructional. So how did you go from, okay, college coaching is not for me, that's what I'm doing, you're trying all these things. Did you just say, oh, let's just try YouTube?
Yeah, kind of. So basically, at the late 2019, a buddy and I who played at Pepperdine, his name is Guilherme Hadlich, Brazilian guy. We sort of talked. We were both like kind of had, I feel like, entrepreneurial minds, and we were like, oh, let's start. He had gotten very good at like creating websites that work with SEO. So we started MyTennisHQ.com. Actually, that was the first thing, and that was basically writing articles, just using the SEO. We wanted to just, to be honest, make some passive income. That was kind of like the goal. I mean, there's no other like real reason. So I was like, oh, let's try this. We're both working. We both have jobs, so we can start this. And there's not a lot of, you don't have to put a lot of money into it. So let's do it. And late in 2019, I got the gig with Naomi, just like as a hitting partner and all that stuff. And I already was like, I think the one thing during this time where I was like kind of experimenting and coaching, I learned a lot about photography, videography. It's just like I'm geeky about those things. So YouTube, just learning a lot of stuff, right? So my buddy was like, Guilherme, he was like, why don't we start YouTube? Like, you're already doing kind of social media anyway. Start doing YouTube, see what happens. Maybe it gets more traffic to the website. So I just kind of started, like, honestly, I just started posting some stuff, like trying to see how could I get my foot in the door? Because, there's a lot of content out there. So how can you separate yourself from it? Obviously, me working with Naomi helps a little bit. You post some like interesting videos there. And
when you say Naomi, you were Naomi Osaka. You're talking about.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, you were like, were you a coach, a hitting partner? What were you doing?
I was a hitting partner. Yeah.
Okay.
I was her hitting partner. So in 2019, I started working with her as her hitting partner. She moved to LA and we started working here. We stayed together like about a year and a half, like on and off. It was COVID year. We ended up like winning a couple Grand Slams. So we actually had a really successful like time, me, her, Wim. who's coaching Iga now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I started, I was kind of doing that. We're trying to figure out like, how can people find the channel and all that stuff. I was doing like little racket reviews, things like that. And it started kind of growing. And to me, it was like, again, neither one of us like needed like the money from the social media. We're just like, let's just keep building it. And eventually like we'll get to a place where like maybe whatever, we'll do something else to try to profit out of that. But I enjoyed the process. I liked making the videos. I thought it was fun, and I just kind of kept doing it. There wasn't anything, perfect. I was just like, as long as I keep putting content out, hopefully people find me. And it just slowly but surely grew, and we sort of saw the path, and it kind of kept growing, and now we're here.
Now you're here. I mean, it's kind of incredible what you've built. Just a super side tangent. You were at Indian Wells when I was there, and it's just like you showed up, you posted you were there, and it's like people just flocked and met you and stuff. I was like, he's like the most famous person here. Like, it was pretty.
I mean, that is really my audience. Any tennis tournament is the hardcore tennis people. They'll be my audience. When I was traveling with Mark, it was just funny. I'd be like in New Zealand, and I'll get like a random email. Hey, I know you're in New Zealand. Can you teach me a lesson? I'm like, that's wild. So yeah, you don't really know the reach you have, until like maybe you're kind of out there a while. But it was MyTennisHQ for a long time. It was not even my name, and we had I think a very strong brand there. Like I enjoy doing the coaching stuff that I did online, because I always had this sort of, how can you even coach tennis online, right? Like, how can you,
right?
Like, I can replace a coach. I can replace someone that comes in and is going to teach you technique if you're learning. But if you already know how to play, you want to learn a little bit more. That was always like my sort of angle. You want to learn a little bit more, like maybe let's cut some of the noise that's online, because there's so much noise there, like 100 million different ways of hitting a forehand or hitting a backhand and things that maybe. I was looking at it and I was like, I never heard any of this stuff. And I've been around some like really good coaches, and either I don't know anything, or they're trying to, reinvent the wheel here. And I just wanted to like try to simplify things for people, and hopefully, well, I think so once you understand a little bit more about the game, it's easier to play the game. And so that was always like my angle. And I think people responded well to that. And yeah, the Indian Wells thing, or any place like that, it's interesting. I'm still not used to that, but like whenever it happens, I'm like, it's awesome. It's obviously you're getting people to hopefully play more tennis and enjoy the game a little bit more.
I've been that person who's turned to YouTube for coaching advice. I play a little bit, not as often as I would like, but sometimes I'm like, I am playing horribly right now. Let's try and fix my forehand. Oh, look, there's Karue Sell's got a video up. Let's try and watch that. And then you realize you can't actually do it. You have got to go into do a bit of practice with it. But that I think it's a really, really valuable resource. But you're right. Yeah, it doesn't quite replace the impact a coach can have directly.
Yeah, or just time, right? Like I think a lot of people just want a quick fix to something, and there's a lot of people teaching quick fixes. And I'm like, look, I've been doing this for 25 years. Like, how can I promise you that you're not gonna double fault anymore if I still double fault? That to me, that's a crazy statement, right? Like when I see things like that, it's like, oh, if you do this, you're never gonna double fault again. I'm like, how? Like we all still double fault. Top pros still double fault, right? So there's a lot of that online that it's the game. Like there's no hate. It's just the way it is. I don't personally operate like that much, but I've always seen, like, I love golf, and to me, like I've always gone to YouTube for some tips and stuff like that, right? Like you're like, I'm chipping bad, or I'm doing this bad, and you go and there's a lot of content there, and it's very difficult to know what to trust, to know, where, what's a good resource here, and so like I understand the experience from the tennis fan, because I do the same for golf. So if I'm trying to create content, I'm gonna then try to create content that to me would be the content that I would like to find in golf. I just find it. I try to give you that in tennis in a weird way.
Karue, I've got to be nice to feel a little bit called out, because you've just said, oh, you're looking for a quick fix. Like, yes, Yes, I
Yeah,
was.
it is, but it is. Trust me, I tried quick fixes in golf as well, but like you can't really replace time. But if you watch one of my videos and you try to do maybe something that literally clicks and is like, okay, this makes sense, and you just instead of watching more stuff, you just kind of do that for a while. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I watched this video, I'm gonna stick with this for a couple months here, and let's see where I get. Then maybe you get somewhere. The problem is you do something with the video, then a week later you find another video, and then you find another thing, and it's just that. Then you're just in a never-ending cycle of like not getting better.
Right, right. So you know, My Tennis HQ doing lessons, videos, and stuff on YouTube. It's growing. It's pretty popular. When do you then pivot to turning pro at 30? Why? First of all, why make the change, and what precipitated it?
Especially given you've already tried doing it once before.
Yeah. Honestly, like, so 2023, I was traveling with Marcos Giron as his coach, like on and off. So we were splitting weeks with another guy, and on the off weeks, I end up playing a few like UTR events here in Newport Beach, like the PTT, which is a great tour. Like you get a lot of matches in. I end up like, I won like 2 in a row, and then I won a couple men's opens. All of a sudden, I'm like, I won like 20 matches in a row or something, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun again. And I'm still just kind of like, coaching a little bit, My Tennis HQ, just whatever. And at the time, I was like, oh, maybe, let's go try to get a point, literally just for content. I wasn't like really trying to play pros. I was like, oh, let's see if like old man Karue can go get a point, right? Like I think that's good content. It's fun. Like I need to keep things fresh, right? And I ended up going. I had to play in Tunisia. I got a couple points there.
And this is a ranking point, right? This is like
ranking points, like ATP points. Yeah, because there's like a lot of there's a lot of kids doing this. Like Felix obviously is like a big YouTuber. He's trying to get his point. There's a lot of that. Like Jules Marie was doing it. There's been like that. That's for the world. And so I was like, yeah, let's try to get a point, right? Like let's see if I can do it. So I ended up like doing it in Tunisia, a couple points, and then that was sort of like late 2023, probably September or something. And then I was like, oh, I'll go play another tournament. Let's see what happens. Just for, again, not necessarily fully like committed to playing pros, but just let's go play a couple more tournaments, have some fun. And on my second tournament, I ended up winning it. So I ended up winning a 15K in Mexico. And, that puts you already, probably like 800, 850, whatever it is. And at that point, it sort of clicks. I think timing of everything was okay, because at that point, the channel, I don't know I think we were at 100,000, probably we're at 100,000 already. So we're starting to get like a few more brand deals. Like, I can see like, okay, financially, I could probably pull this off. Like, because the problem is if you're playing on tour, then you can't really teach, and your income, like I'm married. I'm not like just a single guy living. Like, I got bills. I got 2 dogs, a wife. Like things are moving. So, but like I think the timing of it was very, very right. It was like I got through it, so I was going to be able to play some more main draws already because I won the tournament anyways. I don't have to grind qualies. It's the end of the year. So like, okay, it's coming. I can actually do some actual proper preseason again and all that stuff. The channel is big enough that I think I'll be able to support myself. And I was 30. I was literally in November of 2023. That's when I turned 30. So I was like, and it just came to me like turning pro at 30. Let's see what happens. And it just sort of, like I said, like I work a lot on gut feeling, on timing, on moment. And it's something that for most of my life, I maybe didn't trust as much or didn't understand it. And nowadays I trust it. I just kind of trust my gut a little bit more. And my former business partner, Guy, he used to say, I just kind of walk through different doors that open in life. He was like, oh, I'll go here for a little bit and I'll go here for a little bit. And in a way I do, but like I also like I make those decisions to say yes or no very fast. Like when Naomi like hired me, like, let's do it. I was like, sure, let's do it. It's probably going to be fun. And I do it, and then you learn something from that. Maybe it doesn't work out the way you expect, and you do something else. So It was just the right timing of everything. It just made sense, and I sent it.
Yeah, yeah. It's been really great watching it, even just as I work in film and television production, so I come from the entertainment side of things, and even just watching it as a TV show, it's kind of like turning per so does he make it? Does he not make it? There was this kind of it's a story, and that's one thing I loved about it. But as I was watching you do this thing, you have a YouTube channel, you're turning pro at 30. And I think the lovely thing that I love that you talk like in the series is you talk through the processes of like, just like you said, the channel was big enough to support you so that you could go on tour. You talked about the finances, about all that stuff. How do you think that has impacted, like, are other players seeing you do this and think, oh, that is, because earlier on in this conversation, you talked about how, it's expensive to go on tour and do all of that. Are other players looking at you and thinking, oh, is that a way I can finance my career a bit? Like, do you see that happening?
Yeah, so like there's definitely been, I think a new wave of players trying to do this. You have like the Changeover podcast, which is a couple of doubles guys. You guys Road to Pro, and there's a few content creators that have come out of this, and they've asked me questions like obviously trying to get my input on what to do and whatnot. What I typically tell them, it's obviously a great thing to be able to like hopefully share your story and maybe finance your career through that. It took us like a long time to do it and a lot of work to be able to actually get any kind of money that made sense, right? And so I tell them like, look, if you don't love this sort of like process of making the videos or making a podcast, whatever it is, and you're concerned about the money, about selling merch and things like that, like you're gonna have like a really quick like reality check. Like that's not gonna work. Right now, I've recently had more like, players being like, oh, the turning pro 30 guy, like, and they want to be on the channel, or they want to like, they've been actually very positive about like the whole thing. They're pumped that like I'm sharing sort of that side of tennis. And I do think like even like the top guys are starting to like, oh, maybe there's someone following them around with the camera so they improve their social media content and stuff like that. But again, what I tell them is like it is a lot of work, and I don't know how I manage it at this point. I think the only way I'm able to manage is because I was already kind of big enough in the space to then play. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like matches. To build it from the ground up might be a little bit trickier, but I think everyone has their own like sort of story within that. Like we said, like in TV and all that. Like we all have our own stories, our own ways of telling the story. And tennis, a match is a very basic 3-act like show, right? Like two players are playing, who's gonna win, there's the outcome. It's a very simple thing, right? So so I tell them like, look, it's start small, but just keep making the content. That's the main thing. It's like if you don't have consistency, you don't grow, and it's a very hard thing to do. And it's also very demanding mentally. So you're dealing with, the algorithm and those things, and you can get stressed out about that. Like, oh, my videos are not doing that well and all that. So there's an aspect to it that to be honest, like, I don't know if I was playing top 100 tennis, if I would still be able to have the same level of output. Like, I don't know if I'd be able to put 4 or 5 videos a month. I'd probably have to like bring it down a little bit. And so, but I do think that the more and more players are starting to notice that they can take their own like story and share it. It's just like just be authentic about it. I think the problem is when the top players do it, it's like this production company and they're filming and they're editing and their narrative is going, but it's just kind of boring, and to me it doesn't do much. But there's obviously a lot of creators doing their own thing, and they're able to get a following, even though maybe they aren't the greatest tennis players, but they're able to share a good story.
And I think this is something that we're sharing with you, right? Like we at Ground Pass absolutely love the stories of the people who are kind of coming up that you would go and see on a Ground Pass at a Grand Slam or go to watch at a Challenger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a way of getting people to kind of show up and know the stories before that. I mean, like Anastasia,
Mm-hmm.
we use this because a couple of friends of yours didn't know who Matteo Berrettini was. So I think that's a really cool way of getting that promotion out there for the sport and getting that story out there. And we love stories, and it makes this really relatable and entertaining. But I wanted to kind of ask about, we talk about sort of finances and people looking to YouTube maybe to not only boost their profile but boost their finances. And I want to kind of use this opportunity to kind of put a little bit of an insight into this. You put out a very good video towards the end of 2024, which was really good to give us an insight of like, oh, you're barely breaking even if you were trying to do the Challenger Tour without or futures enter the Challenger Tour without the channel. And that kind of got me curious, because this is something I've been thinking about in terms of the bigger picture. How many tournaments do you, or like a general player maybe who maybe doesn't have a YouTube channel, need to play a year to not only make some kind of living, but maintain a ranking? And these are the guys outside the top 100 I'm thinking more about.
I mean, the reality is like anyone who's not like, a top 10 player needs to play minimum 25 tournaments a year, but like realistically probably 30 to 32, because 18 or 19 of the best results count. So you have to send it. So the problem is like the question you asked is like, how many tournaments do they have to play to be financially in a good place? But the reality is the more tournaments you play, the more you spend. Right. So like there's just that it's a never ending cycle. So you have to win to get more points. I think to get more money. So nowadays, if you're top 200, like you're okay, because you're going to play the slams, the challengers like are paying for hotel. There's a little bit more money going around. So I actually think, the finances of everything has improved a little bit. But in general, if you're just kind of playing futures for a long time, you're gonna struggle. Like it's gonna be very hard to stay out there. And again, sometimes like look at my case, it's like to me, I was already 30. Again, like I said earlier, I have normal people bills nowadays, right? Like and you guys know life has gotten very expensive in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And so those are certain things that I couldn't like. I can't get away from like paying those bills. Whereas someone that's young is coming out of college, they're living off a suitcase, they don't have rent, they don't have like anything sometimes, and they're just going. So maybe that alleviates some of that pressure. But in general, you're gonna have to play a lot of events, because you're gonna lose a lot of first round, second rounds, and those points won't count at all. So you need to keep hunting for points. Like when you're starting, you're not hunting for money at all. Like you're not thinking about money. Like you are, because you're losing it, but you're really thinking about points to get to a place where it's like, okay, now I can play only challengers and hopefully slam qualies and things like that.
I was going to ask, have you met Billy Harris? Because I think he came to notoriety maybe in the UK, because it was reported on the mainstream UK media that he was basically living out of a van, traveling.
Oh, a van, yeah. I never met him. I never met him like in person, but I've seen the story, and I thought it was awesome. And there's been like in Europe, it's a little bit easier to do that, like right, like mobility is like you can't have a van in the US and you go from like Tulsa to like Florida, like that. There's just like an impossible thing. It's too big of a country. But like in Europe, you can kind of do that a little bit more. You can travel by train a little bit more. Like it's just things are slightly cheaper there. But I love his story, and I hope he like continues to like hopefully get to the top 100.
Yeah. So we've talked about the past, talked about the present. Now looking forward to the future. First of all, if anyone doesn't know your story and where you're at now, you can stop listening here and go catch up on Karue's YouTube channel, because I really do enjoy it. It really is like a story. And we're in season 2. Season 1 was a hit. Like season 1.
A lot of ups in season 1. But
yeah.
Season 2 has been tough.
Season 2 has been emotional.
Yeah, it's been a little more emotional. But it's a good story.
Yeah.
That was always something in my head. I was like, if I do good or if I do bad, it's an arc. So like I keep trying to tell myself, like we've had some ups, we're having some downs, and hopefully it goes back to. Sorry, I cut you off, but yeah.
No, it's great.
But yeah,
It's kind of
gets back on track.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's like literally a television show. But so catching everyone up who's just listening now, we're in season 2. You are currently injured, but you're healing, you're coming back. So what is your status right now?
Yeah, currently a little injured. I'm hoping by mid-May, I'm competing. I signed up for a challenger in Colombia, so I think I'm going to do that. I'm likely going to be at the French Open during the qualies week, trying to do some content there because I won't be able to play it ranking-wise. But where I'm working at Technifiber, so hopefully we can get a few hits there with some players and create some content there in Paris. So that's kind of like short term, and then after that it's like going back on tour, just going back to no glamour, just go out there and play and hopefully try to like build back my ranking. Like I haven't really fallen yet because I didn't have that much to defend in this last few months, but there's going to be at some point a moment there where I have to defend a little bit more, and I want to stay. Hopefully my goal is to get to top 200, so I just got to go back out there and do my best once I'm healed. So
the goal is 200. Is the goal also to play qualies and in a Grand Slam?
Yeah, that's the main goal. Like to me, that's kind of like the main goal. It might have put maybe a little bit too much pressure on myself for that. At the end of the year, I was like 258. If I had like one more good result, I would have like made it, I think. And
what's the cutoff?
It's usually like, I think the number is like about 230. If you can be like 230, 225, like you're going to be in.
Okay.
And so I needed like one more result, like had some visa things. I couldn't end up like going to like the last 2 tournaments I was going to play. That didn't work. And going into this year, I'm like, okay, I'm already like 75. Like, that's like, I got a good path for the French, right? There was like 4 months there of like just playing tournaments, like not really losing that many points. And I was like really excited to like give that a chance. And I just unfortunately like, a couple bad tournaments in the beginning of the year. I had an opportunity, then finally made like a quarter, had an opportunity to play Rio, which was great, but also lost first round. So like you don't get any points. And then all of a sudden, like you're already kind of like in March. And I unfortunately had first a shoulder thing that took me like 3 weeks to get better. And then as soon as I was back, I pulled a calf. And then so like I'm basically 2 months out. So I think there was like a little bit of like too much pressure on myself to get to the French Open that I kind of put on myself. And maybe I didn't like enjoy sort of like the, playing in the process as much as I had been. So yeah, I'm just like kind of trying to go back to that mindset. Like the slam thing is going to happen if I'm playing good. So like instead of worrying about that, just like go back into like sort of playing good ball week in and week out. So that's kind of been the tricky part.
Yeah. Maybe Carlos Alcaraz is onto something. Have you seen the doc yet?
I haven't seen yet. Is it good?
It's really good. I really enjoyed it. But literally throughout the whole thing, he's like, if I'm happy, I'm playing well. If I'm not happy, I don't play well.
That's really, I think for certain players, I think like by no means I want to compare myself to Carlos, but I want to say just kind of like he can tell whenever he's happy and smile, he plays good. And I feel the same. Like I don't work as well as just like a robot, like super locked in. I need to, because in the court, I'm like, on the court, I'm sort of a creative player. I like to maybe not be as so structured, but like allow myself to like hit my shots and shot making and all that stuff. And sometimes when you're on tour, it's easy to lose that because you maybe don't play so good for a couple of weeks, and then you start like overthinking certain things, and you get in some bad habits. So that's really something I'm looking to do to like hopefully enjoy this ride a little longer, because I don't know for how long I'm going to do this. So it's one of those things, like once I go back into playing, I want to almost tell myself like this is the last time I'm going to be in this tournament or that tournament, and just allow myself to enjoy this. I'm not saying it will, but like that probably will allow me to like be a bit more present with the whole thing.
Yeah. We like this show to be sort of something someone can listen to and maybe take some advice. So I'll ask you, because I think specifically you maybe could be talking to a young player who's maybe trying to turn pro, I think what I've learned anyway from just, hearing stories and things is that people get really bogged down by how much it costs. Like, it's so expensive. If you're not coming from a well-off family who can just pay for everything, you're losing money everywhere you go, but people still want to be able to try out to be a pro tennis player. What advice would you have maybe for someone who's stuck maybe a little bit in that sort of, do I give up and go get a job in banking? Or, is there something else that I can do? Because I think I love the idea that you said, you just walk through open doors, but is that maybe an advice you would give someone who's maybe just trying to hang on?
I mean, it really depends, I think, to me, of like what age they're at and level, right? So I've always been a very like realistic guy to a fault, and I wish I had a little more irrational confidence and just like, believed a little bit more. That's what my mom always said, but I also do believe that like, you can. I do like UTR nowadays as a sort of like a gauge of level, right? Like it's not really a gauge of like ranking, because ranking can be gamified. You're playing a lot of tournaments versus you're not playing a lot of tournaments, like whatever it is, right? But UTR, you can kind of see a level. So if you're 18 and you're not, to me, if you're not winning like challenger matches or even like winning futures, like I think college is like your number one priority. Go there, get that done. At least you have a little bit of hopefully a second, a plan B in case nothing works out. But like if you're sort of like a young professional already and you're playing, mostly on the ITF tour, maybe for years at that point, it is hard. Like it's very difficult to see someone make an insane level jump from ITF, like they say you were 800-900 your entire career for 3-4 years, like it's going to be pretty difficult for all of a sudden that guy to get to 300. Right? So there are other opportunities nowadays, right? You can play PTT events, UTR events, like men's opens, to make some extra income. Obviously, you can coach a little bit, but I think I don't want to sound like I'm killing anyone's dreams, but I'm like, you have to be really realistic about like, where you're at here. And if you absolutely love it, you love this journey, right? Like you don't care. Like I'm spending the money. I'm in my 20s. I'm gonna send it. Somehow I'm gonna figure it out. Absolutely send it. Have a good time with it. It's your own journey. It's your own story. Like, eventually you can tell your kids that like, look, I did this when I was like in my 20s, right? I think there's an aspect into playing pros that is just like dive in and see what happens. But like obviously, if you financially like you're in a hole, to me, there's a point that I don't think is like really worth it. I think then you can like try to be within the sport in different areas in different ways. Like I've seen guys like, that were good, that were 400-500 in the world, become hitting partners, and all of a sudden they're traveling around the world, and they become like, WTA coaches or, like things like that. And you're like, you can sort of live this experience maybe through a different lens. Like I feel like I've had the experience of like a top pro because I travel with Naomi, I travel with Marcos, I hit in some of the biggest courts in the world. I've had a good time. Never played those events, unfortunately, yet, but I've had a lot of that experience. And I think one thing people don't understand is that once you become a pro tennis player or even like a junior tennis player, if you know what it's like to play a professional, like a tennis tournament, even at the top, the experience is very similar. It's sort of still the same pressures, the same issues that you might have. Obviously, you're making more money, but all the other stuff that's sort of waiting around in the tournament, it rained and this and that, it's all the same. It doesn't really change much. It improves in terms of like how much money you make, but you also have to spend more money when you're at the top there. Like if you're making $1 million a year, but like, you're getting taxed and then you're having to pay a coach, you're having to pay a fee, like it kind of drains you the same way. So the experience like kind of stays the same. So it's up to you to understand. It's like, I like this experience and I'll keep getting through it. And people have different motivators, right? Like people motivated just by like hard work and doing it. Some people are really motivated by money. Some people are motivated by different things. So, understand what's your motivator here and if it makes sense to continue to go. like I'm not motivated really by money anymore in playing tennis, right? Like I don't think about it at all. To me, it's just like, can I earn the respect of my peers? Like I'm not just a YouTuber, like I'm a great tennis player that you're gonna have to like work your ass off to beat, right? And can I just make the best out of this less sort of like, once I'm done, I'm like, I gave it all in a way. So that to me, that's my motivator. But we're obviously in different times of your life, you're going to have different ways to get motivated.
Yeah. And you're talking about motivation there. And I felt like for a lot of this podcast, we've been talking about a lot of the hard bits.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why there are players like yourself keep going and keep playing these tournaments every day. And you talked a little bit about what motivates you, and it's just you want to get respect, you want to be good at this, which is coming out of a lot of your answers. Like, what is it about the experience that like makes it worth it, that you enjoy?
I think because we start so young, we are so locked into this like routine that we have, the practice, the playing, the matches and all that stuff, especially just sort of like the routine outside of playing the tournaments, like having to show up every day to play, to train. And it gives us like this structure that like I've been having a hard time without it for the last 3 weeks. I'm just on my computer all day, kind of just like, been trying to do some other stuff. Now I'm teaching a little bit to get out of the house. And in sport, especially in sports that involve like a swing or playing with a ball, I think you're obsessed with that moment that you think you're like, I think we're all chasing a moment that is like, I figured it out. Like, this is it. Like, I'm good. I figured it out. But that moment never came. If it's fleeting, it comes and goes. But we're addicted to that. We're addicted to that, trying to play at the best level we can. And so, and at the end of the day, this guy, everyone's like a competitor. I'm a fairly chill guy, but like, once we're on the court, like, we're competing, like, and so, man, some of these guys are like hardcore competitors. They it's not necessarily about beating you, but it's like proving to themselves that they can do it. So I think we're all in this sort of search to prove to ourselves that we can like play better than we're playing at this moment, and we're just addicted to that. There's an addiction to this whole thing that we've been doing it for so long, and it's not a bad thing. It's not I think it gives us a lot of structure. I think it teaches a lot about teaches us about life, because that's I feel like any sport is just like life. It would be boring if we were just always winning, right? Like even Rafa, Roger, those guys, they had those downs and we're like, ooh, are they ever going to come back? And they made it back and you're like, whoa. And so that's just we're all sort of doing the same thing as those top guys are doing, but in our own level, in our own like, wow, I just beat a guy who's top 100 for the first time. Or just like you get this like little, I'll tell you this, when you play pros, like 90% of the time is just 90% of the weeks are just disappointments. Even if you have a great week, but then you lose 7-6 in the third in the semis and you're like, you're disappointed. Like, you're always a loser technically. Only one guy wins it. But in those moments that you do something great for you, I got my first like challenger semifinal last year, and I was like, whoa. Like, I'm in my first semifinals like ever. I was in Bogota actually, and that it's a little bit addicting, and it's part of the whole journey. And that's why I think a lot of players have a hard time getting away from the sport afterwards, right? Like, everyone kind of comes back for coaching and things like that. Like, not many players do like the Ash Barty thing and just like, I won everything I needed, I'm out, like, I'll see you guys on the next one. Which I respect. I would have done that too. But yeah, it's sports. I think it's not just tennis. I think it's all sports are like that.
Yeah. Well, we have such limited time with you. This was great. Nick, do you have any other questions before I wrap up?
I think the last question I want to throw out there is one that you've been asking players in Charleston, Anastasia, when you were there. And Grand Pass is a podcast aimed at newer tennis fans or more casual tennis fans. Karue, what would you say is the most important thing for you to realize if you're a new fan of the sport?
Realize if you're a new fan of the sport is that I think to me, tennis, I think, has always had this narrative of like, it's a gentleman's sport, or gentlewoman's sport, and there's like a nostalgia play into tennis, like the aesthetic of like back in the day and whatnot. But I think to me, what people need to realize, and it's something that Andres said, I think in an interview once, something Agassi, and he's like, tennis is sort of the closest you can have of a combat sport without two people punching each other in the face. You're in a cage. You feel the weight of the ball. You feel what the other person is trying to do to you, and you're trying to do the same to them. And so as a fan, as you watch it, you can watch two guys 400, two girls 400 in the world, two girls 200 in the world, 175, doesn't matter. You're always going to get that. And there's so much like drama into that if you really pay attention to a match, yeah, matches can be a little bit boring here and there, but people are just like putting themselves through such a like a weird thing. There's no shot clock. It's just like you have to finish it. And that's sort of the appeal to me. It's mano a mano, like almost combat. And as a viewer, as a casual viewer, like you can watch, you know, your local men's open and the US Open, and you're gonna have some good stuff in there. So I'd say, you know, if there's local tournaments to watch, lower level tournaments, like I'm going to Ojai this week up here in California for the men's open just to can play it. I've won it a couple times, and I just want to be there and just like kind of watch. And you see the people in the stands like, well, are these people top 100? I'm like, they're not even like ranked in the ATP. And so like get more out there to watch some like live tennis, and you understand that a little bit more, the emotions and all that stuff. And I don't like that tennis is always like been this like country club, like cool, like whatever. Like to me, that's BS. It's not really the reality when you are actually in the thick of it. So if you enjoy that, go watch it. It's really fun.
Yeah, I love that. That's like the perfect way to end, and it's exactly what we try and get people to do on Ground Pass. So Karue, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us on Ground Pass. And for everyone listening, you know, do the thing, like, subscribe, rate. I'm going to get something.
Leave a comment, share it, do the whole thing. I have a video going live literally in a minute, which is kind of funny. So it's like one of those, you got to get the engagement. But again, it's one of those, you just kind of have to keep making good content. You guys are clearly making good content, so I'm sure good things are going to happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.